Hi, how's it going? I'm Marlena. Thanks for wandering by. So, I'm back with another countdown video, and today we're going to do books. We're going to do my top 5 books of 2024. But before we do that, I have some stats to share with you, little stats. And also, I want to talk about my favorite book covers of the year as well. So, these books are not necessarily published in 2024 or published or released in 2024. These are the books that I read in 2024, and I'm really excited to share it with you. I have returned to reading, right? I'm in my reading era, like the kids say. But I have returned to fiction reading in a big way this year, and I've finally started like actually using the Goodreads app and keeping track. And I've been watching a lot more booktube channels, especially recently here in the latter half of the year. And I've just gotten into and excited about, talking about books again. So yeah, so without any further ado, I'll give you my stats. So this year in 2024, I read 65 books. 65. And of those books, 6 of them I did not finish. So I'm keeping track of everything like in my reading challenge little thingy of what I read or did not finish. Now, when my I guess, definition of DNF is a book that I read about between like 50 to 100 pages. I try to give a book at least like 100 pages. I try to get to at least 100 before I decide it's not for me. So, yeah, so they give you the amount of pages that you read, but mine would be off because I did not finish 6 of those books anyway. So I had set out my challenge to do what I think it was like 45 books, and I ended up reading 65. So that's cool. So before I give you my top 5 books, I want to share with you the five, yeah. The 5 covers that I loved the most. And these are actually don't cross over. So the covers and my top 5 books are different books. So I just wanted to share with you some of the beautiful covers that I really just loved this year. So the first one is no, it'll be here, The Familiar by Lee Bardugo. So honestly, this cover is what made me want to pick up the book. Like, it's stunning, like it's just gorgeous. And then the version that I had those like beautiful black sprayed edges, like gorgeous. The book unfortunately did not live up to the beauty of the cover. It was okay, but anyway, we're just talking about the cover. So that was at number 5. The number 4 cover is a book called Piglet by Lottie Hazel. Now, like, that cover is just like, oh my God. Anything with food on the cover is like amazing. And this like giant burger, this book was, I don't remember what my rating for this book was, but like I still think about this book, and I feel like I think I talked about it like as if I didn't like it, but I think I really like this book the more I think about it later. Anyway, for me, this was just like a stunning, really cool cover. Like, I absolutely loved it. And then, so that was number 4. So number 3 cover is a book called, I'm like off the camera. I'm not a pro, okay, you guys? So then the next cover is a book called Greta and Valden by Rebecca K. Riley. And like just the colors, I mean, and that the fact that there's limes on the cover. Limes are a big deal to me. Lemon and lime, like, smell and food and everything to do with lemon and lime. Um, but yeah, Greta and Valden, like the pink, the green. I mean, this cover is really, I'm not sure if the cover really matches necessarily the book itself. It was a good book, but I really love the stunning cover. And then number two cover that I really, really loved, I think more than the book itself, is We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. And this is a YA novel. I really did enjoy it. I read this, I think, more towards the beginning of the year, and it was really good, but not, I think, as good as the cover. But the cover is just like, this cover feels like it could be like a tarot card, like it's maybe like an Eight of Cups or something. But I love the illustration and I love the colors. Yeah, it's funny because like I love pink in like design, but like not on my person necessarily. So yeah, so that's the number two cover that I really loved. And then the number one cover of all of the books that I read this year is Rouge by Mona Awad. I'm not sure I'm saying her last name correctly. I should find out how to pronounce that. But Rouge, like, I mean, it's so minimalistic and the black and the red, and I honestly feel, if you've read Rouge, tell me what you think. But I honestly feel like this cover, you feel immersed. The whole world of the book feels like this black and red and this like red jellyfish that is like a flower here on the cover. This is a fever dream kind of a book. It's really weird, but really cool. I enjoyed it. It wasn't one of my top five, but it was a really good book. It was a worthwhile read. And yeah, I feel like I don't know if this makes sense to you guys, but the feeling of that visual is like permeates throughout the book. Like I felt those colors the whole time I was reading it. Like I really felt immersed in that cover. So yeah, so those are my top five book covers of 2024. But now let's talk about the top five books that I read this year. So, coming in at number five on my list of top five books that I read this year in 2024 is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I read this book. This is the first book that I read in 2024. So I read this book in January. It was published in 2012. This is a much beloved, much discussed, much like hyped, talked about book over in the like in social media spheres, book tube, book talk, etc. It's a Greek mythology retelling of Achilles, of the Iliad, really, but of specifically Achilles and his relationship with his longtime boyhood friend, Patroclus or Patroclus, however you want to pronounce it. I've heard it a couple different ways. So, and it's a love story. I mean, so, how true is it to the mythology? You know, there's a lot implied by the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus in in the Iliad and in other, you know, places. But for me, it doesn't matter. Like, this book is like my favorite of the Greek mythology retellings that I read. And I sort of maxed out on Greek mythology retellings after this. Like I read a bunch of others and this is like by far my favorite. And I don't think I'm into the Greek myth retelling genre anymore. Because nothing really kind of lives up to um yeah, the Song of Achilles. It obviously follows a lot of the events of the Iliad, but with a very narrowed focus and lens on the relationship and the love story between Achilles and Patroclus. And it's heart-wrenching, it's beautifully written. If you've been on the fence about whether or not to read The Song of Achilles, like does it live up to the hype? Like yes, like 100%. If you love love stories, if you love heartbreaking, heart-wrenching love stories, because you know what happens, right? I mean, it's not like a spoiler. This is a really old story. But yeah, I truly loved it. And it's Yeah, it's just one of my favorite books that I've read I mean, of this year, but in a really long time. So let me read to you a little quote from the Song of Achilles so you get like the flavor of the novel. I could recognize him by touch alone, by smell. I would know him blind by the way his breaths came and his feet stuck the earth. I would know him in death at the end of the world. I mean, oh, and you'll see there's a trend of love stories here in my in my top in my top 5 books. I'm a sucker for not necessarily like romance books because I have read and do read romance novels, but these are typically, well, I mean, I think everything on here is literary fiction, maybe a little sci-fi in there too, but with a love story in it. So, and an enduring, pining, longing, like unrequited love sometimes in there too, but mostly just like this like pining, yearning love that like, oh my gosh, that's my jam. Anyway, the Song of Achilles, number 5 on my list. So coming in at number 4 on my list of top 5 books of 2024 is Orbital by Samantha Harvey. Now, this book was nominated for the Booker Prize. Did it win? I think it might have won the Booker Prize. I think, did it? I can't remember. I think it did. Anyway, I read this book this year in 2024 in September, but it came out last year in 2023. So this book came out in 2023 and I read it in September. So, Orbital, it's literary fiction and it follows a group of astronauts, cosmonauts that are in the International Space Station as they orbit the Earth. This book is a collection of like anecdotes. It follows like what's actually happening in the space station, but it also like it the book does like metaphorically orbit. Like it's literally like a just like a it's very free flowing. It moves like this orbital. It really just, or I should say like this, it just it spins and it spins out all of these like very poetic stories. It's all about like what it means to be human, what it means to be you know in the universe, what like these giant concepts of like life and death and like movement and um I don't know, like all of these things and like what it means to be alive. They're looking at Earth from where they are. A tsunami takes place that the astronauts and cosmonauts see happening on Earth. One of the astronauts or cosmonauts, um, her mother dies while she's up in the International Space Station. There's like, and then I mean those are big events, but then there's like all of these anecdotes of small events of there, like there's a to do with one of the astronauts and his wife and a painting. It's beautifully written. And if you're into like kind of like non-linear, like really really kind of like flowy, very poetic musings, like it can be seen like very like philosophically, I think, as well. Then Orbital is a book for you. I truly truly loved it. It is very for me because it's all just really like super abstract, very thinky, very heady, which is my kind of jam. It is not there's not really like love story in it, although there is discussions of love, but it's not like a love story like, some of the other books on this list are. Anyway, let me read you a quote from Orbital so you get an idea of the flavor of this novel. Our lives here are inexpressibly trivial and momentous all at once, it seems he's about to wake up and say, both repetitive and unprecedented. We matter greatly and not at all. To reach some pinnacle of human achievement only to discover that your achievements are next to nothing, and that to understand this is the greatest achievement of any life. which itself is nothing, and also much more than anything. Some metal separates us from the void. Death is so close. Life is everywhere, everywhere. So yeah, Orbital, for those of you that are interested in like kind of sci-fi, but mostly just musings, ponderings, what it is to be, if you're into that kind of thing, this is definitely the book for you. And it was absolutely one of my favorites this year in 2024. Add number 3 on my list of books, of my top books of 2024, is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. So this is translated from French. And this book was actually published in 1998. And I feel like I really should have read this book in 1998. It seems like just the type of book that I would have been reading in college, because that was my first last year of high school and entering into college year. I read it this year in September, and I think it got a resurgence because it was I think it had gone out of print and then it was republished, and it got some like excitement and steam in the booktube world or book talk world or social media. It came, people were talking about it again. So I Who Have Never Known Men is how do I summarize this? But if you read like a summary of or a blurb about the book, it like immediately draws you in. It is the story of these women and who have been imprisoned in a bunker underground for they don't know how long, and it is told through the lens of one the youngest of this group of women, and the entire book is this woman trying to figure out why they were there. They do manage to get out of the bunker, but I don't want to spoil anything for you. Um, and it's deeply philosophical. It's deeply existential in my mind. It is a book about another book about like the question of the meaning of, what it means to be human, what it means to be alive, but like even just on the surface level of like the trials and tribulations of figuring out where they are, who they are, is this earth, not earth, how did they get there, why are they there? It's like it's very absurdist, but also very sad, and really, yeah, it's just amazing. I mean, it reminds me of, Waiting for Godot, and other books, or well, that's a play, but other things like this. And it's just, yeah, it's amazing that I didn't read it, because I feel like this should have been on the list of things that I was reading in classes that I was taking in college. But in any case, I Who Have Never Known Men, it's not that long. It's a shorter novel. I can't remember how many pages it is, but it's just like a must read. um like it'll change you. Like reading this book will change the way you think. It'll change you. It does something to a person. So I'm going to read you a quote from I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. Because I want to know, sometimes you can use what you know, but that's not what counts most. I want to know everything there is to know, not because it's any use, but for the pleasure of knowing. And now I demand that you teach me everything you know, even if I will never be able to use it. Oh my God, so good. Yeah, I Who Have Never Known Men. Yeah, if you haven't read this and you are at all intrigued by the premise, like I highly, highly recommend it. One of my favorite books of 2024, if not like all time. And so now for number 2, this was really hard to pick number 2 and number 1. It wasn't like a glaringly obvious choice. Like these two, number 2 and number 1, were like kind of tied, but then one sort of edged out the other. So number 2 on my list of top books that I read in 2024 is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. And I read this book in July of 2024, but it was published in 2019. And this is another book that is gained like lots of popularity, is much discussed on social media. And it's written by two different authors. Essentially, this book is an epistolary romance. Now, this book is it's it's set in a, I mean, in a future, in a different world. These two main characters, Red and Blue, are agents, time travel agents for two different warring factions. And they are set out on missions to, I guess, sort of, they're supposed to be at odds with each other. They're supposed to be doing things in the, like, for their war, to help their own their side in this like war, across, time. But like, here's the thing. This book doesn't care if you understand what is happening. It doesn't care. It's not going to give you like giant world building. There's not a lot of discussion about how the time travel works and who these different like factions are. Not really. What ends up happening is that these two are supposed to be, I mean, I think they're supposed to be out to kill one another, but instead they end up writing these letters to each other, and then they fall in love. And it's a sapphic romance too. So these two women fall in love, and it's just beautiful. Like, it's all epistolary, so letters to one another, and you're following their, things change about them, between them, as it goes on. It is like an epic poem. It is an epic romance. It's like the inner workings, like the details and inner workings of their like particular world and time travel and the war itself, and like what time period we're in at any given point, like, doesn't matter. And if you are going to get caught up in like minutia and things like that, then like this might not be the book for you, because it's not like a real science fiction. It's a sweeping, like, beautiful love story, and you do feel like the ebbs and flows of like the action that is happening, but it's really about the relationship between these two. And yeah, I was all in from almost right away. Like, I was like, wait, what? And then I didn't care. I just didn't care, because I was like just sucked into the beauty of the writing and the story. So I'm okay with things being like really loose and really abstract in this way. And that's why I loved it. So I'm going to read you a quote from This Is How You Lose the Time War. Um, oh my God. Okay. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'll write it in waves, in skies, in my heart. You'll never see, but you will know. I'll be all the poets. I'll kill them all and take each one's place in turn. And every time love's written in all the strands, it will be to you. Okay, like, just, yeah, right? I mean, if you ever need to find a quote for a love poem for someone that you love, borrow from This Is How You Lose the Time War, because it is some of the most beautiful love letters that anyone could write to someone else. It's just stunning. If you like that kind of thing, I highly recommend that you read This Is How You Lose the Time War. Definitely one of my favorite reads of this year, and maybe of all time. So that was This Is How You Lose the Time War. And so my number one book of 2024 is a book that I don't even remember where I heard about this book. And it's not like much talked about, I think, in social media, or on BookTube and that kind of stuff. It's literary fiction. and it's called Anyone's Ghost by August Thompson. And this book did come out this year in 2024. It was published in 2024, and I read it in October of this year. And I absolutely just like was enamored with in everything about this book. It is more linear and plot driven than any pretty much any of these other books. Although the Song of Achilles does, follow a particular linear story. But this book, it is a it's a love story. It is like one of those like pining, yearning love stories. It's a coming of age story. Our main character, we follow him through different periods in his life, where he meets and befriends and falls in love with um, the other main character. And it is he's just like amazing. I mean, it's just an amazing story. It's beautifully written, and you know that the love, his love from when he was a kid that he sees again when he's in his 20s is going to die. Like that's in the blurb. Like that's the first line of the story, that that it took however many car accidents to kill him. And I'm forgetting, like I'm actually forgetting the characters' names right now. I don't know why, but I don't want to like stop and look it up because it doesn't really matter. What matters is that it is linear, but we do jump. There are time jumps, and you follow our main character and basically this relationship and love that really like impacted him as a teenager and then into his 20s and late 20s. And it's just like it's one of those things where there's like like their interactions with each other, like nothing happens but everything happens. Like they learn about one another when they finally, oh my god, it's just I don't want to spoil anything, but it's like it's just beautiful, and it's all the things that you can relate to in like when you meet somebody who just like impacts you from from top to bottom. Like it's just amazing, and it's sad. It's like really really sad, but I love a good sad love story. Like I just love it. And our main character is bisexual, so like that's just another like really like greatly written, because I haven't found that many characters that are bisexual written like as great as this one is. And this book is a departure. It's a bit different because it's not quite so abstract and it's not quite so like philosophical, but it's really just like this. I mean, it's a kind of book that I love as well, where you're just like kind of given this like window into this person's like coming of age, and then like you follow them across a little bit of time. And it's really about how this one other person just like made such a difference in their lives. And I'm going to give you a couple of quotes from Anyone's Ghost, but I feel like I'm trying to be vague about enough about the book so that you'll read it. I don't want to tell too much about it. But here are a couple of quotes from Anyone's Ghost. So here's one. I would give anything to change the nature of the world, even if I could change it just for you. And here's another one. It's all here. It's now if we want it to be. Time, distance, they're no longer the problem. The problem is courage. The courage I need and the courage you want. We can find it in each other. I swear. I swear if you'll just let me show you. And I know those two quotes aren't nearly as poetic as some of the others from the other books, but like I just think that like the building of this like relationship and their friendship, their common ground on books and like I don't know, like that time when you just can kind of speak through song lyrics to another person. That's another big part of the story as well. So yeah, so Anyone's Ghost is my absolute number one um book. I forgot the word for book. My absolute number one read, my favorite book of 2024, followed very, very closely behind by This Is How You Lose the Time War. So that's it. Those are my top five books of 2024. I hope that you enjoyed this. I would love to know what you read this year and what you loved, fiction, nonfiction, tarot related or not. I don't care. Tell me about it in the comments down below. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this. And again, I'll be back with one more, maybe two, one more, maybe two countdown videos. So yeah, thanks so much for sticking with me. And I hope that you all have a beautiful, wonderful day. Bye.